Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today I'm here with a book review. The book that I'm going to be reviewing is Different Seasons by Stephen King, which possessed a great deal of promise because Talk Stephen King ranked this as the #1 Stephen King book of all time, and Vulture.com ranked all of Stephen King's books as well, and placed this one at number 5. #1 on that list was The Stand. And then On Writing was number 2. I think It was 3. I'll leave a link down below to that list. But as far as Different Seasons is concerned, I feel that the great deal of promise had to do with the fact that there were 2 heavy-hitting works that were adapted into even greater, more noteworthy films, and that would be Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption becoming The Shawshank Redemption from 1994, and The Body, which became Stand By Me, a film that came out in 1986. Apt Pupil, which became a 1998 film, was also in this collection. But the works in order are Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil, The Body, and The Breathing Method. The Breathing Method has yet to be adapted into a film. But the reason for Different Seasons being the title has to do with, aside from a basic suggestion, each of the works has a season-based slogan. For instance, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption's is Hope Springs Eternal. Apt Pupils is Summer of Corruption. The Body is Fall from Innocence. And The Breathing Method is A Winter's Tale. And each of these explores something, maybe not The Breathing Method, but the other 3 explore an area of horror that the horrific part of it is that this is something that really happens and has the ability to happen. There are a lot of works that are driven. A lot of Stephen King's works are driven by supernatural elements, but The Breathing Method is the only one that has such, which I'm not going to make mention to specifics, but there is something in The Breathing Method that is horrifying but can possibly happen, and it does happen, but not to the extent it doesn't unravel the way that it does. As for the basic plot for each of these stories, Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption has to do with is told through the eyes of a prisoner by the name of Red, who in this case is a red-headed Irishman, unlike in the film where he is a black man played by Morgan Freeman. But Red is serving a life sentence in prison because he murdered his wife through the process of removing the brakes from a car that he knew that she was going to drive. He did not know that she was going to pick up another woman and her infant son. So he was responsible for the death of 3 people. But Red is also telling the story of Andy Dufresne, who is in prison for murdering his wife after he found out she was having an affair on him. But Andy is a banker who is able to stretch things out a bit. He has helped the wardens and guards with their banking. He got a position at the prison library. On the topic of the warden and the guards, there are a few key differences from the film. In the film, Sam Norton is always the warden, and Byron Hadley is the main guard. In the book, Hadley starts out as a prison guard toward the beginning of their sentence, but he leaves he leaves at some point during the text, and Norton does not become the warden until later on. They're pretty similar in structure to their characters at hand. I do feel that the movie, though, really capitalizes on their attitude, which I think that there are elements in the film that really take the ideas from this book and reach for the stars. And while I think that the movie is actually pretty strong compared to this, the book, I feel, really delivers a very powerful message about the sketchiness within prison system, and how it's much more complicated than the eye for an eye method, and what fair really means, as in the Golden Rule. The Rita Hayworth part within the title is inspired by Andy's interest in pinups that he likes to hang up in his prison cell, and Rita Hayworth was one of his long-lasting. The Apt Pupil explores another horrific moment in history because it follows Todd Bowden, who wants to be an investigator, and he goes to the house and meets a Nazi officer during the Holocaust, during the Second World War, named Kurt DeSander, who is masquerading as Arthur Denker. And Todd Bowden grills him, questions him, and in some points torments him psychologically. But DeSander really engages in some horrific acts and brainwashing mind games of his own, and they heavily affect Todd, and whether it be with his grades or just in general, and it really made for a creepy and a really strange novella. And I feel that the fact that it is touching upon one of the most horrific real-life horrors that took place is something that was really it really took a lot of fortitude to go forth with it. And I think Stephen King did a good job with putting something together of this nature. I have yet to watch the film adaptation. And I have yet to watch the film adaptation of The Body, but there have been so many references to it. I know The Simpsons spoofed it within one of their episodes, and Family Guy also had their own reenactment of Stand By Me with characters on the show. But the body has to do with four boys told through the eyes of Gordon LaChance, known as Gordy, and his friends Chris Chambers, Teddy DeChamp, and Vern Tessio, and how they decide to go on an exploration just before the school year and look for the dead body of Ray Brower, who was a teenager in the town. This one really explores a coming of age and how people that are kids that are 12 years old really think they know what it is to be an adult and be all grown up, but they have so much more to learn. And this really takes things for them by storm. And I think that Stephen King does a great job making Gordy a relatable character next to a more confident Chris, but a more careless or clueless. I think they each have a little bit of both as far as traits go in Teddy and Vern. And I think that it's interesting because the story's set in 1960 and Gordy's just pushing 13 years of age. If you do the math, this would be September of 1947. And it could very well be the case that Gordy shares a birthday with Stephen King himself. I feel that Stephen King is really in his element when he's telling stories about kids that are growing up during the same time that he did. Hearts in Atlantis also talks about somebody growing up in around 1960. And I think that writing what you know is really comes into play with that. And in the breathing method, the story follows a David Adley who joins a club where they each exchange stories. And one, Dr. McCarran tells the story of a supernatural delivery that he had to make on a cold, icy night that was Christmas Eve going into Christmas morning. And I feel that of the four works, the breathing method was the weakest in how it was a bit of a challenge to follow outside of the Dr. McCarran's story. Because the rest of it, it's a challenge to figure out where you want to grip on. And then you have, I think that the best stories in here, the two that were my favorites, were Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption and The Body. I think that both of them did a great job delivering their message and also developing their characters. I especially feel that The Body fleshed out their characters perfectly. I think that I had a great sense of each of them and a great idea as to why they were the way they were. And I thought it was also cool to get a glimpse in Gordy's own, his writing that he would share. Especially Lard-ass Hogan and how he entered the pie-eating contest, which was quite clever. And I thought that Apt Pupil did a good job delivering a real-life horrific message through the text at hand. And I think that different seasons, in general, gave us a different kind of horrifying horror. As for how I would rate each of them, I would rate Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, 4.5 stars. Apt Pupil, 4 stars. The Body, 4.5 stars. And The Breathing Method, 3.5 stars. As a collective unit, I gave it 4 stars. Thank you for tuning in to this video. I hope you check out some more on our channel. I hope you... I had a great time taking part in the Stephen King 70th Birthday Readathon and catching up on the Stephen King books. The last time I read a Stephen King book was in 2014 when I read The Shining. And speaking of which, we're going to be going over The Shining in a December episode of Literary Gladiators. Thank you for tuning in, and for now, keep reading.